The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf. Probably should call this Saturday Under Review, given the lack of games that were on Friday and Sunday. Not even notable games, just games in general. Stacked Saturday slate this weekend. We're here to break it all down. A lot to get into. Got 5 games we're going to really dive into before previewing some of the games of the year that are coming up this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. No better place to talk about those games than a Basket Under Review. If you have not subscribed, do so. Getting a subscription gets you access to all of our paywall content on the website at basketunderreview.com and access to the Discord, which is all of Shirley Donovan's insights and intel on the best collection of college basketball sickos there is on the internet. One subscription gets you access to both the website and the Discord, to make sure that you do that and do it for one of your friends too. We all need a friend. Get them a Basket Under Review subscription. All right, Matthew, let's dive in here. This was not maybe the best game of the night, but Alabama and Tennessee is where we need to start. One, because of all the Charles Bediako situation. But number two, Tennessee won the game on the road in a way that we really haven't seen much. They played at a level we have not seen from Tennessee since they beat Houston. Alabama, I thought, still looked really good for the most part, but just didn't get the win, didn't hit a lot of threes. What's your biggest takeaway from this game? We'll start with the Tennessee side of things before we dive into Bediako and all things Bama here.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know if this says a ton about Tennessee. I think it was just Alabama playing a poor game. LeBaron Fallon obviously needs his Robin of Aiden Holloway. Mm-hmm. He was way too 3-point dependent for his style. 9 of his 20 shots were from 3. You want him getting downhill in the pick and roll. Tennessee does a very good job of limiting drives, and they did a great job of that here. And there were not enough other guys on Alabama who were confident and effective 3-point shooters in this one. So even though the interior D was better and the alley-oops to Charles Bediako definitely helped,
Yep.
He definitely knows how to roll in a screen and roll. He's definitely done it a time or two in his life. This team is still a 3-point shooting team first, and they didn't have enough 3-point shooters in this game. Not to mention Amari Allen really underratedly is such a huge part of this team. And although Holloway's shooting was a big loss, Allen's all-around game was also a huge loss. So I'm not going to bump up Tennessee for too much, at least for winning at Alabama, just because I think this was a short-handed Alabama team not playing even a B game necessarily.
Bama essentially had a 6-man rotation in this. Like Noah Williamson played a little bit, Jalil Bethea played a little bit, London Jemison played a little bit. All those guys play essentially TV timeout each half. It was a 6-man rotation for Nate Oates and company, largely because of missing Allen and missing Holloway there. The one thing with Tennessee that was nice to see, first off, best game Nate Ament has had in his college career. It was awesome to see him do that. Bama had no answers for what he could do. We talked in the preview for this game, or I guess it was the recap of the last Tennessee game we talked about, where Jalen Carey was taking a ton of shots and they needed to fully lean into Gillespie and Ament being their offense. Those are the two guys who you're going to trust be your offense. Play like it, right? Gillespie had 20 shots. Ament had 20 shots. The rest of the team had 20 shots.
Jalen Carey had 1.
Jalen Carey can get a little bit more than that. Want to see a little more aggressiveness from him. Don't swing totally the opposite end of the pendulum that you need. But I think that shot distribution where each of your top guys gets 20 and the rest of the team is supplementing that with about as much, I think worked well for Tennessee. It obviously helps when Ament is hitting his shots like he was, and Gillespie is getting to the rim and kind of getting to the paint when he wanted to. When he did, he had some moves in this game that were just insane. Some highlight level stuff from Gillespie. But that's a distribution from Tennessee I want to see moving forward. And if we lean into that, I think we got a better chance to get into the better version of Tennessee than what we really kind of had the last month or so. But the Alabama side of things now, let's talk about Bediako and his impact, because there was a moment during the game where I chuckled because he was doing the lob catching. He was doing the rim protecting, doing all the things that he was doing 3 years ago. We were like, yeah, there might be an NBA role for him doing those things in the level he does them at. But I thought his, unlike James Najee, his impact on this game was felt, and I think was almost kind of necessary for Alabama, given what they don't have on this roster.
First of all, James Najee didn't even play yesterday.
Correct.
So that conversation's over. Like, James Najee has a 96 offensive rating and didn't play. Who cares? But bye-bye, James Najee. Your time is up. Yeah, obviously Charles Bediako helps. Like I wrote about in the Basket Under Review's weekend watch list, you could argue he is the greatest big man defender Nate Oates has ever coached. And if Herb Jones was not coached by Nate Oates, you could say that Bediako is the best defender that Nate Oates has ever had. They were the number 1 defense, number 3 defense in the country, number 1 in effective field goal percentage in Charles Bediako's second season, his last year before this year at Alabama. Like, he's a huge help on the glass. And I mean, also at the rim, it is not a stretch to say that he could change Alabama's season, but Alabama only goes as far as the 3-point shooting takes them. If you add in better spacing from Aiden Holloway and, more on-ball touches from Amari Allen with the rim protection, with the lob threat that Charles Bediako is, then not only can this team, win the SEC, but their ceiling's even higher if they have Bediako with them for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that might be something we end up talking about on Friday's episode, because by then we should know what Bediako's status for the rest of the season is going to be. How do you feel about Alabama moving forward? Because this is a team that we've seen them play with the best teams in the country, and they're right there in those games. At the same time, they've lost 3 of their last 5 games. They are 8-6 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, which is still a very fine record, but nothing that's going to really blow you away or be a indicative of a team that is competing for SEC title or things like that. Their defensive efficiency against top 50 opponents is outside the top 100. Is there real cause for concern with Bama, or is this just a matter of all the mismatched pieces they've had and the injuries and trying to find themselves? I guess, how concerned are you or not about Alabama moving forward?
I'm not concerned. I mean, the only really issue is the injuries. This was not Aiden Holloway's first stint injured. It's his third. This was Amari Allen's second stint injured. Latrell Wrightsell is in and out every other game. Aiden Sherrell's been hurt. LeBaron Fallon missed a game. I don't think that they're going to be healthy. If you're going in and out of the lineup, it's telling me that everyone's banged up and Nate Oates is trying to buy time. I don't think you just can't reset the season, take 2 weeks off and get everyone right. If Alabama was fully healthy, then I think they're the top 10, top 5 team in the country, but they're not if they're missing guys in and out of the lineup, if no one's truly healthy, if they're playing hurt. That's their flaw. I mean, defensively, they're not spectacular. They got better defensively with Charles Bediako, but I don't think that the defense is holding them back. I think it's the personnel and the help.
I think they were a 5 seed the year they made the Final Four, if I'm not mistaken, either a 4 or a 5 seed. This Alabama team feels like one that's going to fall in that 4, 5, or 6 seed range because of their resume and just because of all the pieces that have been in and out of the lineup, as you mentioned. I called them mismatched earlier. This feels like a team that's going to fall in that range that nobody wants to see in their region, because hopefully they're healthy by then. And when they are healthy in the style that they play, it's a dangerous team that is much better than your typical 4, 5, or 6 seed. Let's shift to the Big East, because Villanova took UConn to overtime. And while both of us very much respected Villanova and what they've done in the first year under Kevin Willard, did not expect them to give UConn this tough of a test at UConn. And I know Braylon Mullins' injury early in the game impacted that a little bit there, but it's still a Villanova team that had UConn on the ropes, took some UConn late game heroics to ultimately win the game in overtime. Does this say more about UConn to you or to Villanova?
I mean, we finally got a good solo ball game. He was 5 of 12 from 3, but he also had 5 of their 8 threes. The shot making on this roster, especially when Braylon Mullins left early, it's severely lacking. They don't have a lot of on-ball scoring. Silas Demery has been the consummate point guard, but he's not a get yours late shot clock guy, at least in an efficient manner, and especially from deep. Solo ball, for as good as he was shooting, a lot of that was in transition off of set plays. And we know Alex Caravan and his strengths in the way that he fits Dan Hurley, but he's not, late shot clock ball in your hands type of guy. It's really Mullins, and you hope he's okay and that he's going to be playing moving forward. But a lot of their late shot clock was just pounded down low with Terrence Reed. Villanova is similar in UConn's ability to slow the game down and get you in late shot clock, And UConn really struggled in big spurts in late shot clock offensive execution. And inevitably, I think that's going to hold this team back because you have to have a certain ceiling on a roster where if things aren't working or if a team's blowing up your actions or if they know how to scout you, you can just beat them one-on-one. And I'm not certain that this UConn team has that.
I give UConn a lot of credit because this feels like the sixth or seventh time, just offhand, where they've been in a tight game late against varying levels of competition and have figured out a way to win. They just, no matter how well they've played or how poorly they've played, they find a way to get it done. Silas Demery has kind of become that guy. Solo Ball hits some big shots. Alex Caravan, all he does is hit big shots. I love that they show their like championship medal in those moments because those are the moments where you need to make the plays win the game. That can be the difference between a Sweet 16 finish and a Final Four run is how you perform in those late game situations. I don't think anybody has done that as well as consistently as UConn has. At the same time, it is problematic that they are in those situations this much against Big East competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is a bit of an issue. A lot of that comes from the offense not being at the level where UConn expects it to be, or even where it was in November and December with this group. I do wonder if they played outside the Big East with this level of play, if they would have suffered a loss or two or three at this point. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword here from a UConn perspective because it is great you're showing your ability to win close games, but why are you in close games so much against mid-tier teams that are in your weaker league?
It's because the offense isn't doing what the offense needs to do. Time to fix it, but right now they are not a late second weekend team right now.
How do you view Villanova in all this? Because we've talked about them being very solid. I still think that there is a very real ceiling for them where they are not on UConn's level, but I just can't say enough good things about the job Kevin Willard has done and the fact that this team is 15-5 and 6-3 in the Big East, and it doesn't feel fluky.
Yeah, I mean, they're feisty. They slowed this game way down. They hit some big shots. Kevin Willard somehow made Devin Askew good, which is like the greatest accomplishment of his coaching career. The Wisconsin win is aging well, but it's also their only top 50 win on the year. They're staying close with good teams. They're beating who they have to beat. But I don't think that they're that good still. Like, they're feisty. Feisty and good aren't necessarily synonyms.
I think they're destined for an 8-9 game or a 7-10 game where their ceiling is winning that game.
Honestly, that would be a huge accomplishment with this roster.
Accomplishment. I think you'd tell that to any Villanova fan back in May, and they sign up for that immediately.
This roster, like in the summer, was like, how are you going to win 5 Big East games?
Right.
And now they already have 6.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. A great job by them, but a great win by UConn. Interesting dichotomy there with just how we look at those two programs, given the expectations for both. UNC and Virginia, not in a similar boat because both of them expect to compete for the ACC title, but UNC needed a win like this. Went to Virginia, overcame a 16-point deficit at one time in the first half, got the win, ended up being 85-80 in Charlottesville. How were the Tar Heels able to mount that comeback?
I would say that the answer is Hubert Davis woke up and played the correct guys. Okay. No more Jaron Stevenson. No more Kyan Evans. A lot of Seth Trimble, a lot of Derek Dixon. And it worked. They have their best players on the floor. They hit threes. The defense was fine, finally. It only took, like, coming back from the West Coast after getting destroyed twice to realize that. They didn't turn it over. Like, they did all the things you have to do to win the game when you have two of the best big men in the country. Like, it's like they're starting a race like 5 minutes ahead of everyone else, and they just have to find a way to get to the finish line first, despite that. And they were able to do that here. They erased a big deficit. They were down 16 late first half, but Seth Trimble played as well as we've seen him play since he got hurt early in the year. And he's probably the ceiling raiser because they need a guard, any guard, and he is a guard who is decent. So that automatically helps.
I have to stand up for Jaren Stevenson here. 17 points, most he scored this season. I thought he made
the bench helps.
He made some big plays, and I do think him coming off the bench is best for this team. The Seth Trimble Derek Dixon combination is something that I have been clamoring for UNC to go with and fully lean into for feels like months now. The byproduct of that was Kai Evans played 8 minutes in this game. And I think you probably need him playing more than 8 minutes with his shooting, but I would definitely lean more towards him playing 8 minutes than him playing 28 minutes with the way the rest of this team played around him. Caleb Wilson did what Caleb Wilson does. You beat Virginia with a bad Henry Vasar game, who was just in foul trouble a lot of the night. That, I think, bodes well to what UNC can be when they play the right lineup and guys are playing up to their capabilities.
No, for sure. I think that definitely is a big factor there. But I would say for Virginia, we knew who UNC's go-to guy was. Definitely Caleb Wilson. I don't know if Virginia knows or has that elite go-to guy. Malik Thomas leads them in usage. Tyce DeRitter is probably their best player, but I'm not sure either of them are a superstar.
Correct. And I'm glad you brought this up because I had Ryan Odom said something about this after the NC State game in the post-game press conference where he was kind of like, it was a good thing in his mind that they didn't have a go-to guy. This is the quote he said, this direct quote. We don't always have a first option, quite honestly. We have a leading scorer, obviously, but everywhere I've been, the go-to guy is the open guy. And I think that is a great way to have a philosophy and to have as much balance as Virginia has. And I do think that philosophy has elevated this team. But if you're going to go from being a top 25 team or top 20 team to a let's compete for a conference championship, compete for a Final Four type run, you need to have a guy. And I do think that is what this team is missing. Now, context of that, this is the first year of Ryan Odom. He had to overhaul pretty much the entire roster. Finding one of those guys is hard. And elevating this roster and getting a roster that could get you to 16-3 and be in a spot where you are one of the better teams in the ACC is exactly what Ryan Odom needed to do in year one. But I do think this game, we did see the impact of not having that guy. That's a great point.
In all three of Virginia's losses, they were leading at some point in the second half and got outscored in the last 10 minutes. Yeah. That is what happens when you don't have the guy.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Any concern about that for Virginia moving forward, though?
No, I mean, they're steady. They take great shots and allow poor shots, at least for the opponent. They're big. They're athletic. They have a lot of good players in depth. But yeah, like that, the superstar part is what takes them from a Sweet 16 team to a Final Four team. And right now, they're much more of the former than the latter.
I will say this, too, for Virginia fans and for non-Virginia fans who just want to know the way teams are going to be talked about over the next month, you're going to start hearing a lot more about Virginia being potentially really good and figuring things out, even if they haven't done it. They do not play another Ken Pom top 50 team until Valentine's Day when they play Ohio State, who Virginia should beat, and then they do not play another one until February 21st. They go Miami, NC State, and Duke at Duke. Those are the only top 50 games Virginia has left on their schedule. The next run of games here, Notre Dame, Boston College, Pitt, Syracuse, Florida State. Virginia is very well suited to end the season with 25 wins, get to a 14-4, 15-3 even record in the ACC without being much different than they are right now, just because of what's left on their schedule. And the way we talk about things in the media typically is team starts winning a bunch of games. It becomes hey, this team has kind of figured things out. I do want to get ahead of the fact that this Virginia team is good. They should win a lot of these games. It doesn't materially change what I think Virginia's ceiling is. But look, they've already taken care of business against NC State. They've done it against Louisville. They've done it against Stanford, Cal. They've done it against SMU, at SMU. This is a good Virginia team. We're not going to know about the ceiling of this Virginia team, though, until February 28th against Duke.
Yep.
Yeah. It's the next time that gets tested. Ceiling was tested for Illinois, going and playing at Purdue. And I would say Illinois got it done. But Keaton Wagler was the one who got it done. He scored 46 points at Mackey Arena to lead the Illini to the 88-82 victory. He was spectacular. He was spectacular. I have no other words.
No, I mean, when you get Daniel Jacobson and Oscar Clough standing in front of you, you're going to have a pretty good game as a high-scoring shot-making guard. Brian, I know you have something on that. I want you to lead off with that.
Yes, this drives me crazy in the NBA. This drives me crazy in college. I understand the concept of wanting to switch everything so that you don't leave open three-point shooters. That is great. That is philosophically sound. I understand. But there has to be some common sense that's applied to that. If you are running 1-4 flat and somebody comes up to the ball screen and the ball handler is not attacking, there's no need to just gift him a switch. There were so many times where Wagler's just having the ball atop the key, big man comes, sets a screen, and they basically just like high five each other, and Oscar Clough taps in, or TKR taps in, or Daniel Jacobson taps in, and Wagler did nothing and has the matchup that he wanted. That is something that I'm not just pointing out Purdue here. That's something everybody's got to throw out the window because we see that way too much, and it is too easy for these offenses to get these switches that they want. Now, at the end of the game, Purdue stopped doing that. The end result was you got Thomas Offovicic hitting the 2 threes that he did late in that game that were open, which the rest of the team has to rotate. There are rotations on the back end of that need to happen for it to be smart, and that's something Purdue needs to work on. But this whole idea of we're going to switch everything no matter what, I'm not going to say is what allowed Wagler to go off the way he did because he was doing some absurd stuff in this game. But Purdue helped him get there because those coverages and just the tag you're in was so frustrating. So frustrating.
Do you think Fletcher Lawyer's 6'5"? Because he's listed at 6'5". I don't think he's 6'5".
He is thereabouts. He might be 6'4", but he is legitimately taller than you think he is. Yeah.
If he's 6'4", then the only player on Purdue's roster between 6'4" and Trey Coppin-Ren's 6'9" is Jack Bender at 6'6". All this to say, Purdue has zero positional versatility defensively, and Keaton Wagler absolutely exposed that. Because when they had a smaller guy on him, he got downhill. When they had a bigger guy on him, he kind of put him on an island and then shot over him. They had Jack Bender to play a ton in this game because he's the only guy that's a wing size. You can't have one wing on a roster and that wing be a freshman. This was so overly exposed by Keaton Wagler that, 46 points says all it needs to say. But another thing I want to mention, Trey Coppin-Renn scored 20-plus points 19 times last year. Do you know how many times he's hit 20 points this year?
I'm going to say 3 and none in 2026.
Zero. He has not hit 20 points this season at all. He did it 19 times last year. Trey Coppin-Renn needed to have a big game here in an Illinois scheme that lets you run pick and rolls. Braden Smith did a great job of driving and kicking, but Trey Coppin-Renn in the short roll was not the threat that he needed to be, and quite frankly, that he was last year. He had 29 points on 23 shots in this game last year. He went 6 for 8. Obviously, he was in foul trouble, but when he was on the floor, he was not aggressive looking for his shot. This is not the same Trey Coppin-Renn as last year. And when Fletcher Lawyer is going through a huge slump and you're depending on freshmen off the bench to be Braden Smith's second and third option, like Keaton Wagler points aside, that's not good enough when you have the defensive versatility issues and your second and third options are completely invisible.
It's true. Matt Painter is an awesome coach, and nothing I'm going to say next should impact your opinion of Matt Painter, my opinion of Matt Painter. I think he is an awesome coach. If there has been one consistent kind of nitpicking thing that I have with Matt Painter, his game plans do not always match the roster he has recruited. This is a big roster. Play big. Lean into it. You're playing a small team, wants to space the court. Do something other than what you did. Play some 3-2 zone. Play some extend pressure a little bit. Have your two bigs at the back. Do something defensively. Worry about it offensively. And Braden Smith was awesome in this game. I was going to bring up the fact that this is a second straight game. The other team's point guard has gone off, and Braden Smith has been outdueled. I do not think Braden Smith is at fault for any of that, quite frankly. they don't play all the time to their personnel. They play the way that I think is a smart way to play, and Matt Painter is a smarter basketball mind than I am. But you have two bigs on the court. You refuse to truly punish Illinois down low. They did for a lot of the first half. Second half, they got away from that, and I do think that hurt them. But defensively, you're going to play two bigs because you're always going to have two of Clough, TKR, Jacobson on the court. Do something other than making them run out and guard Wagler. Like, do something else. And that frustrates me from time to time because I understand the philosophical reasons, again, why you do all of that stuff. But then don't recruit to play a way that is or to a roster that is not indicative of the way that you want to play. I think that's a breakdown sometimes what happens with Purdue and maybe lead to some of this stuff, because if you want to play defense that way, it'd be great to have a wing that isn't Jack Benter doing some of that stuff, or a higher profile defender. Lance Jones was not huge. I think he was 6'1", maybe, if I remember correctly. But his quickness and his defense was able to get underneath guys of that size and allowed him to defend anybody 1 through 3. I still think that's what this Purdue roster is lacking, and they haven't been able to totally capture since he was on that team during that title run.
At minimum, if you're going to play two bigs, you cannot get out-rebounded by 14. In any game against anyone. I understand that Illinois is the best rebounding team in the Big Ten, but you can't get severely out-rebounded, because despite all of this, Illinois still barely won this game. Keaton Wagler had the best performance I've ever seen from a freshman on the road in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And Purdue still almost won. TKR was invisible. Fletcher Lawyer was invisible. Braden Smith missed 3 minutes due to what looked like a season-ending injury that wasn't. And they still almost won. This team is still terrific.
Oh, yeah.
Still the second best offense in the country. By the way, Illinois is now number 1 in the country in offensive rating, and because this is the best offensive season basically ever, they are number 1 in Ken Pom history in offensive rating right now.
Yep.
And Purdue still almost won this game. So it's fixable. The roster has its limitations, but they're still awesome, and they still have the best point guard in the sport.
Yeah, Purdue will be fine. They are fine. Fletcher Lawyer is going to start hitting shots again. TKR should get back to the way that he was playing before. Clough's going to be fine. But this kind of leads into it too. Only 3 offensive rebounds, and you have such a big advantage on the inside. They didn't crash the glass at all. They were so concerned about getting back so that Illinois wouldn't get transition baskets. They gave up one of the things that they do well.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now. Just another thing that, because Purdue should have had no problems in this game. Even with Wagner going 46.
Frustrating game to watch, yeah.
Again, I'm not a Purdue fan. Illinois fans, I almost wore my Illinois shirt during this. Wagler is awesome. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more in a little bit. But a huge, huge win for the Illini there, going and winning at Mackey, giving Purdue its second straight loss as well. That was one of the games of the day. Houston and Texas Tech was the other massive game of the day. Texas Tech gets the 90-86 victory, about maybe 40 more points scored in this game than we were anticipating. Texas Tech becomes just the 3rd team to score 90-plus in regulation against Houston since Kelvin Sampson took over. The first non-Memphis team to score 90-plus against Houston under Kelvin Sampson. Big win for the Red Raiders, despite Kingston Flemings going for 42 points. Another huge freshman outing there. So how was Texas Tech able to do it?
They significantly out-rebounded a Kelvin Sampson team, which I never thought would happen.
Yeah.
They won the rebounding battle 44-28 against a Houston team. JoJo Tugler, amazing defender. He had 1 defensive rebound in this game. You cannot, as the starting big man of a Big Ten roster, have 1 defensive rebound in 23 minutes. Texas Tech had 4 more offensive rebounds than Houston had defensive rebounds. It was an absolute annihilation on the boards against Kelvin Sampson Houston. I don't even know how Kelvin Sampson slept after that game, after getting dominated on the board so badly. Like, Houston was the better shot-making team. They had the best shot maker in this game. Christian Anderson had 12 points, and Kingston Flemings had 42. Kingston Flemings, if you told me Kingston Flemings outscored Christian Anderson by 30, you would tell me that was the worst loss of Texas Tech season. Do you know how bad Houston's defense, known for getting steals, that only had 5 in this game, known for dominating the glass, that lost by 16 on the boards? Like, that's unbelievable. It's unfathomable for a Kelvin Sampson team to play this poorly on defense and on the boards. And so it doesn't matter how good Kingston Flemings is. It doesn't matter how good Emmanuel Sharp's shot making was. Houston will not be as good as the last 3-4 years if they don't dramatically improve on the glass, which has been a little bit of an issue all year. And obviously Texas Tech is amazing offensively, and Josiah Mosley helped. And Luc Bamgoye as a defensive anchor will also help. And this team's amazing. It doesn't excuse the fact that Houston had its worst defensive and rebounding game that I've ever seen under Kelvin Sampson, by far.
We have talked about this Houston team before and the fact that they're just different than other Houston teams have been. They are still really, really good, but they are the worst or second worst defensive team since Kelvin Sampson took over at Houston. But they're this best offensive team by far. So it's different. And they did all those things not well, and they almost beat Texas Tech on the road. Like, this is another one of those scenarios where you did all these things wrong. We're going to talk about all the things you did wrong. But you still almost beat a very good Texas Tech team on the road without all those things going right for you, which still bodes well, I think, for Houston moving forward. The Texas Tech team, Christian Anderson, JT Toppin played the entire game, as they should. Toppin had another massive game, 31-12. Anderson, talk about him in the preview being, I think, the swing piece in this game. He ended up not really being, because Kingston Flemings totally canceled him out. But 12 points and 9 assists, I thought was fine. He kept the offense going. But Jonathan Atwell and Jalen Petty scoring 18 apiece was, I think, what really was the difference in this game. Lawan Watts is typically the third guy. We said it doesn't really matter. As long as the third guy steps up for Texas Tech, that's when they're fine. They had a third guy and a fourth guy step up. And I think that ultimately proved to be the difference for them in this game. Continue to do well without Bamgoye, who's only, I think, going to elevate where this team is at. Just a solid, not fluky performance from Texas Tech offensively, and they had a huge emphasis on the glass, dominated there, as you mentioned. It was a very good performance from them. Houston team, kind of to your point, it is a little weird that they are struggling in areas that they are struggling with, that you pointed out. You brought up Tugler and the fact that he's not like a great defensive rebounder. He hasn't been a good rebounder. Last year, he was awesome on the glass. His offensive rebound rate has gone up for what it was last year. He was, slightly. He was 27th in the country last year. He's 23rd in the country this year in offensive rebounding rate. He was top 400 defensive rebounding rate last year as well, playing next to what I was going to say Tugler again, but this is Tugler, Juwan Roberts. Without him, his defensive rebounding rate has dropped 5%. Like, when you need him to step up, it's gone the other direction. And I don't think that's necessarily something we expected coming into the season. I don't think that's something that Houston expected coming into the season. We also thought Milos Uzan was going to be awesome, given the way that he had performed in Big 12 play last year for Houston. Like, he kind of came on down the stretch last year, and he was largely invisible in this game in a way that he can't be. I give Kelvin Sampson a lot of credit, because there were some calls that I know Houston fans took issue with late in this game. And he was asked about it post-game, and he talked a little bit about it, but immediately stopped and was like, but I'm not going to complain about the refs when we got killed on the glass, particularly offensive rebounding, the way that we did. And I think that is exactly the attitude that he needs, that Houston needs. This is why Houston is as good as they are, and Sampson is a good coach as he is. So I expect that to be course corrected. But yeah, like, getting dominated on the glass is not something we typically see from Houston. But I think that speaks to also this Houston team being different than we've come to expect from Houston teams in general.
Yeah, for sure. Jojo Tugler is a 14th percentile on-off defensive rebounder, which means 86% of players are better in terms of the differential of how many defensive rebounds you get versus allow when you're on the court. He has not been good enough on the glass. He needs to be better on the boards. And that is going to be Houston's flaw if they are not to make it far this year.
Yep, 100%. Those were, I think, the 5 most notable games, but plenty of other things happened, plenty of other notable results, certainly, around the country from the weekend, a.k.a. Saturday. So what did you see? Where else do you want to take us? Make sure that we discuss here.
On Friday night, so less games, you may have noticed this, St. Louis went up to St. Bonaventure, a very hard place to play, and won by 35 points. They shot 58% from three and allowed St. Bonaventure to shoot 18%. After that game, St. Louis moved to number 1 in the country in effective field goal percentage offense and number 1 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense. That is impossible. In terms of shot making, number 1 on offense, number 2 on defense. This team is absolutely absurd. They're up to 24th in KenPom. They are better than that. Their lack of elite opponents has kind of hurt them there. They are better than 24th. So what I wanted to do was, as I watched through Saturday's slate and watched some miserable performances from some high major teams, these are some coaches that I would strongly encourage some programs to consider letting go of in replacement for Josh Schertz, who is absolutely positively a high major coach. Syracuse, Red Autry's not your guy. Kansas State, Jerome Tang has not been good since the year he lucked into Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson. The defensive effort at home against Kansas was disgusting. On Saturday, Kansas got absolutely everything they wanted without Darren Peterson. Jeff Capel, Pittsburgh, probably shouldn't be the coach there anymore. That team is a really tough watch, especially offensively. Kim English, talk about bad defense. My goodness, to allow what Georgetown did in the second half of that game, you can pump your fist, Brian. That was not Georgetown.
Obligatory Georgetown mention. I'm glad we got it in.
That was Providence being a completely inexcusable defense, completely inexcusable offense. Wes Miller didn't score a point per possession against Arizona State, who was basically allowing a point per possession to everybody. And then one last shout out. I don't think Josh Schertz would take this job, but I remain in my opinion that Penny Hardaway should no longer be the coach of Memphis. They lost by 15 to Wichita State, scoring 59 points. On the road in that one, Doug McDaniel was benched down the stretch because he had 4 points in this game. That team is now below 100 in KenPom and is very bad. Those are all coaches that should no longer be employed after this season, and Josh Schertz should definitely take one of their jobs at minimum.
I think it's a much shorter list if you were to ask coaches at the power conference level who are definitively better than Josh Schertz.
Not many.
He is awesome. What he has his St. Louis team doing is terrific. They're going to win the A-10. Should very much win the A-10. George Mason stumbled against Rhode Island, which helped open the door there. Which, speaking of Memphis' next head coach, Tony Skid might be on that list too if they decide to move on from Penny. You talked about a number of things there. Yesterday was one of the best days of basketball that I can remember. Just like all the different things going on, and so much of the college basketball conversation has had to do with courtrooms and off-court things and international pros coming over and G League guys coming over. That like the tenor around the sport from the non-game perspective has been so negative and so up in the air. But Saturday was one of those days that reminded you of like how great the sport is. You had DeBonsa scoring 43. We talked about Wagler scoring 42 or 46. Fleming scoring 42. That's insane. Like 3 freshmen doing that is insane. That doesn't even count Cam Boozer going for 30 plus for the however many straight games in a row for Duke doing his thing. This freshman class has been absolutely incredible. You get that combined with the returners that we have. Braden Smith just put up 27 and 12. We were like, yeah, good Braden Smith game. Just the fact that we're just like kind of shove that to the side is incredible. And from a game perspective, you had all those 5 games we talked about, huge games. In addition to that, though, you had a crazy ending where Missouri hits a half-court shot to beat Oklahoma in a game that doesn't necessarily it's a mid-tier SEC team, so Oklahoma's bottom half of the SEC, but incredible finish there. Nebraska goes 20-0 without a sweat. 20-0 for Nebraska. We had UConn Villanova obviously go to overtime. Auburn and Florida was a really, really fun game. Auburn gets up big early. Florida comes back. Auburn pulls away late. That was really fun. You mentioned Kansas going to Kansas State. No Darren Peterson. Melvin Council is doing the Kansas State student section thing back and forth on the court, mocking them openly. Gonzaga and San Francisco at night went down to the last couple of possessions as well. Like this was I could go on and on and on. This was a fun fun, I'll say, day of college basketball. And like, I understand all the off-court stuff, all the reasons why people talk about the sport is dying and blah, blah, blah. We had a day of insane games, insane finishes, and high-level basketball in a way that I don't think it was played at 8-9 years ago. That is the benefit of having some of these guys come in. I think Saturday in particular was a reminder of how great college basketball is. I'm not going to say the sport's in a healthy spot because there's a lot that is wrong. But the on-court product, I think, is as good as it has ever been. And as we just wrapped up conference championship games in the NFL, there's one football game left. We're getting into the stretch here where college basketball is the dominant sport on the calendar. These next 2 months, I think, are going to be the most fun 2 months that we've had in quite some time.
I'm glad you mentioned that right before we preview two of the best games we're going to get all season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's not a coincidence that these are coming too after conference championship weekend in the NFL. Let's get to those because Monday night is going to be Arizona against BYU. This is a hell of a week for BYU. It's the number one team in the country, number one team on KenPom, before you go play Kansas over the weekend for the DeBonsa Peterson matchup there. This is going to be a lot of fun. So what are the biggest keys for you in this game?
Not enough people are talking about Ivan Karchenkov, the freshman wing for Arizona, who is one of the best defenders on the wing in the country. There was one possession against Arizona State, Cincinnati the other day when they just played. I think Karchenkov had 3 or 4 out-of-bounds deflections on the same possession, and he just screamed to the crowd louder and louder each time that he deflected the ball. It's one thing to be a good defender or a natural defender. It's another thing to want to defend and to get excited when you make a good defensive play. And Karchenkov checks all of those boxes. I say that because the 6'7", 220-pound freshman should be the person guarding AJ DeBonsa for a lot of this game. And I feel bad for AJ DeBonsa because we talked about how DeBonsa really had struggled getting to the rim and scoring at the rim in Big 12 play after that Texas Tech game where he struggled and had that huge minus 28 on off. He went to Utah, who is the worst rim defense in the Big 12, and just scored 43. He made 4 threes. That was his best three-point shooting game of the season, but a lot of his work was done downhill where he is truly elite, and Utah had no one that could keep him from getting to the hoop. Arizona is not only one of the 5 best rim defenses in the country, but they have amazing perimeter defenders to keep him from getting there in the first place. This is like the nightmare matchup for AJ DeBonsa. Now, he's also a top 2 NBA draft pick. He's very good. Nightmare matchups sometimes aren't enough to keep him from being outstanding, but he will have to be outstanding because BYU has really struggled to shoot around him in Big 12 play. Arizona is going to make them hit shots around him, and BYU doesn't force any turnovers. You need to force turnovers against this Arizona team because when they get out and running and they have control of the ball, they are very, very hard to stop. So AJ DeBonsa may not need 42 points here, but he'll need something in that general vicinity to win it on.
We're going to find out how good BYU is. I don't know if they're going to win this game, but we're going to find out how good BYU actually is in this game. They just had the Texas Tech loss at Texas Tech last weekend, losing at Texas Tech, nothing to be embarrassed about, particularly when you were winning in the second half of that game by a couple possessions there. But you're getting Arizona at home. This Arizona team has been as consistent as anybody in the country. I'm not talking about consistently good. I just mean consistent, knowing what you're going to get from them game to game. You may be consistently bad. You may be consistently great like Arizona is. You may be consistently mid like some ACC teams. They have been as consistent at their level as anybody else in the country. That level just happens to be better than just about everybody else. It has been insane what they have done this season. I feel like I use the term machine-like fairly often to talk about teams, probably more than I mean to. And using machine-like to describe this Arizona team, I think with how often I have used that to describe things, discredits how good Arizona has been. But it has been machine-like. The way that they just show up, figure it out, get out in transition, beat you down low, and just hammer you over the course of a game. And then you look up, oh, we're down 20. Okay. Yeah, this Arizona team is on a different level. BYU has ebbed and flowed throughout the course of games, particularly big games. Every single big game that they have played. They're going to go on some runs, probably take leads in this game, probably going to go through dry spells that allow Arizona to put some distance between them. We need to see the most consistent performance from BYU that we've seen from BYU this season if they are going to win this game. Because if you go through a dry patch, you go through a dry spell, and Arizona gets a 6, 7, 8 point lead, I don't know if they're giving that back. I'm not going to totally write it off because Dibonsa is as good of a prospect as there is in the country. You say he's a top 2 pick. I agree he's a top 2 pick, and I'll also say he's not 2. I would take him over Peterson or Boozer or whoever you want, and I'm not thinking twice about it. What he does is special. So I'm not going to totally write that off. But the key in this game for me, BYU has to be as consistent as they have been this season, or more consistent than they have been this season. Because if you give Arizona anything, they're not giving it back.
Yeah. Arizona has not been trailing by more than 1 possession at any point in Big 12 play. That's pretty crazy. To be good is one thing. To basically never lose is another thing. This game will come down to if Kebaketa can stay out of foul trouble. He's pretty good at that, all things considered, averaging 3.4 fouls per 40. But obviously there's extreme physicality with the front court of Arizona. If Kebaketa is not playing, that's probably curtains because there's just not enough proven front court depth. Obviously, Abdullah Ahmed has had some ups and downs. He's shown some stuff, but you need Kebaketa in this game big time. And if Arizona can get him on that bench with 2 fouls early, I don't know if BYU can really hang down low.
It'll be interesting to watch, certainly. It's also going to be interesting to watch to see if Michigan can give Nebraska its first loss of the season. There was a chance this was going to be undefeated. Michigan obviously did not make it to that point, but Nebraska is going to play this game at Ann Arbor. Both Arizona and Nebraska 20-0, both going on the road, big spots here. But from the Nebraska-Michigan standpoint, what are the biggest keys to this one?
6 games ago, Michigan was the number 1 team in KenPom history. Today, they are not the number 1 team in KenPom this year. Arizona passed them. Michigan, against the spread, both in KenPom and the betting markets, is 0 for their last 6. After beating USC by 30, Penn State by 2, loss at Wisconsin, and then 10 double-digit wins, but low double-digit wins against 4 mid-level at best Big Ten teams. They have not surpassed expectations in any of their last 6 games. Nebraska, on the other hand, has done so in basically every contest throughout the entirety of the Big Ten slate. They have a 30-point win over Wisconsin. They have been the dominant Big Ten team, not Michigan. That said, Michigan's the better basketball team, and they're at home. The size is going to be a problem against a Nebraska team that switches everything. And you know what happens when you switch everything? It means that you are boxing out someone who is typically not your size for offensive boards. Michigan should win the offensive rebounding battle. That said, Michigan lost the Wisconsin game because they allowed a million pick and pop threes and Wisconsin hit them. You know which big man loves a pick and pop 3? That would be Rink Mast. Michigan's going to have to change up their defensive play style because Rink Mast getting 15 open threes means Michigan loses. So this should be a fascinating coaching battle between Dusty May and Fred Hoiberg, and I can't wait to watch it.
We just saw Illinois' bigs be able to space out Purdue's bigs. Nebraska's going to try and do the same thing against Michigan's massive front line. I do think Michigan might be more equipped to handle that because obviously Yaxel is not a true big, and Moriah Johnson has some lateral movement to him as well. But it'll be interesting to see. One note with Michigan, too, you mentioned the last 6 games where they've struggled. They are 293rd nationally in three-point shooting during that stretch, 30.8%. Before that, they were 27th in the country at 38.3. They're shooting 8% worse from 3 the last 6 games than they were. Michigan is much more than just a three-point shooting team, obviously, but I do think that matters.
For sure. Roddy Gale, 21% in conference play. Lendeborg, 29%. Not enough guys are hitting shots consistently.
No. You want to know how crazy this weekend was?
How crazy?
I went through all of that spiel. Did mention that Rick Pitino got his 900th win against his son in a very close game, which Dylan Darling hit an insane shot late in the game to win. It was a hectic weekend. Hopefully it'll be a fun week too. We'll see what happens. Obviously we got these two games, plenty of other high profile games. Hopefully everybody stayed safe and warm with the winter storm that came through. Got like an inch of ice outside here. Just lovely. Stay safe, stay warm, enjoy the basketball. Talk to you guys on Friday.